Nintendo is well known in the industry for pushing innovative ideas into their new hardware. While most of these ideas have seen incredible success, such as the Wii's motion controls or the Nintendo Switch's hybrid nature, there are other ideas like the Wii U that unfortunately struggled to find an audience. One of these systems stands out amongst the crowd, one that to this day serves as an important lesson on how not to sell an idea. I'm your host, Pancake Army, and today's episode of Gaming Gallery will be discussing the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy was Nintendo's first attempt at developing a handheld with stereoscopic 3D visuals, predating the Nintendo 3DS by many years, using a head-mounted display with fancy high-tech magical mirrors. It's a little more complicated than that, but for the sake of simplicity, we won't go into too much detail here. This technique was invented in 1985 by Reflection Technology Incorporated, a company in Massachusetts. The head-mounted display, called the Private Eye, acted as some sort of viewmaster. RTI demonstrated the Private Eye to several companies including Sega, Mattel, and Hasbro, eager to find funding for a commercial release. Sega declined on the Private Eye out of concerns over the red light display and potential motion sickness. Nintendo, however, was excited over the concept, with Gunpei Yokoi, the creator of the Game & Watch and Game Boy systems, seeing it as an opportunity to develop unique games that other consoles couldn't replicate. And the new system, codenamed VR32, began its 4-year development cycle, while Nintendo's other engineering teams continued to work on what would become the Nintendo 64. The Virtual Boy went through some changes during development. Experiments for a color display happened, but Nintendo eventually declined against it. We experimented with a color LCD screen, but the users did not see depth, they just saw double. Color graphics give people the impression that the game is high-tech, but just because the game has beautiful display does not mean that the game is fun to play. Red light uses less battery, and red is easier to recognize. That is why red is used for traffic lights. Due to the high cost and unimpressive results, Yokoi decided to use the red display used in the final version. Head tracking technology was also tested but was scrapped due to concerns of motion sickness and developing lazy eyes within younger children. This was the reason why the final version was designed to be a stationary display. Over time, Nintendo continued putting more focus on developing the Nintendo 64, with internal resources constantly in favor of developing the new console. The Virtual Boy continued development with little focus from Nintendo and pretty much no involvement from Shigeru Miyamoto. In order for the company to complete focus on the Nintendo 64, Nintendo decided to release the unfinished Virtual Boy onto the market. Okay, let me just say, that's a stupid and terrible idea. That wasn't in the script, but The Virtual Boy was officially announced on November 14, 1994. The system launched at a high price of $179.95, which was much more expensive than the Game Boy at the time. However, Nintendo seemed to not consider the Virtual Boy as a replacement for the Game Boy, intending for the two systems to coexist. Launch titles in North America included Mario's Tennis, Red Alarm, Teller Boxer, and Galactic Pinball. Mario's Tennis would come bundled with the Virtual Boy in North America. Nintendo of America projected selling 2 million units by the end of the first year. Well, with lifetime sales at around 770,000, that clearly didn't happen. Due to the Virtual Boy's high production cost and disappointing sales, the system was discontinued less than a year after its initial release, with the final game, 3D Tetris, releasing on March 22, 1996. One thing that might have contributed to the Virtual Boy's poor sales was Nintendo's marketing strategy. That sounds like a familiar situation. Realizing it would be difficult to advertise a 3D device on a 2D home television, Nintendo teamed up with Blockbuster to offer rental consoles to customers for just $10. Customers who rented a Virtual Boy would receive a $10 discount for a full-priced one. But this only acted as a way for potential buyers to see how unimpressive the hardware really was. By the time the Virtual Boy was discontinued, Blockbuster would end up selling the console for just $50. Lastly, we'll talk about two canceled games for the Virtual Boy: Virtual Boy Mario Land, also known as Mario's Adventure, and Star Fox. Star Fox has very little information known at the current time. The only footage of the game currently available shows an Arwing, flying in space. So that's pretty neat. And it's also rumored that many concepts from Star Fox 2 were planned to return in Virtual Boy Star Fox, such as cinematic camera angles. Virtual Boy Mario Land is a bit more interesting. Mario would have been able to move back and forth between the foreground and background, with some segments even featuring a top-down perspective similar to The Legend of Zelda. Another game on the system, Mario Clash, a Virtual Boy remake of Mario Bros., was originally planned to be a minigame within Virtual Boy Mario Land. Mario Clash would end up being released as a separate game. Sorry, blah, one breath. Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy Kong's Quest originally started development as a Virtual Boy game. The sequel was greenlit shortly after the Virtual Boy's launch and was only in development for a few weeks. After the system's failure, Diddy Kong's Quest was reworked into a Super Nintendo game. No footage for this game is publicly available, at least as far as our gaming gallery researchers can find. Later, Gear 2. But a Mario Kart game was also in development for the Virtual Boy, but got canceled within a few weeks. However, a homebrew game made by fans exists, so we can at least see what the final game could have potentially been like. And now for some random fascinating trivia. To help prevent motion sickness, each cartridge had an option to automatically pause the game for every 15 to 30 minutes. The controller featured two D-pads to help better control 3D games like Red Alarm. 2D games use the second D-pad as a left-handed mode. The Virtual Boy requires 6 AA batteries to operate. You can see where this may be problematic, although it was also possible to plug the console into a wall. Nintendo planned on releasing a strap that would allow the player to better hold the Virtual Boy when playing away from a table. A link cable was planned to be used in multiplayer games, but was never released. 2 games, Waterworld and Faceball, were going to use the cable. Waterworld ended up scrapping the multiplayer feature, and Faceball was cancelled completely. When the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console launched, Reggie Fils-Aimé denied the possibility of Virtual Boy games coming to the system, claiming he was unfamiliar with the system, which made it a low priority within the company. This may be it for the Virtual Boy, but its legacy lives on, with references in games like Super Smash Bros., Tomodachi Life, Animal Crossing New Leaf, and many more. The Virtual Boy will always live on in our hearts forever and ever. Well, that's all for today, so thank you all for watching this episode of Gaming Gallery. If you want more gaming trivia, be sure to subscribe to G.A.M.E. or something. We can't force you, but we greatly appreciate it. And somewhere on the screen right now, there is also going to be a link to my Earthbound Let's Play. If you want to watch, it has nothing to do with the Virtual Boy, but Earthbound is the greatest game ever. I've been your host, Pancake Man, and remember, within our hearts, we are gamers.